Fellas, this weekend is one of the most stacked fight nights of all time, with Robert Whittaker taking on Ikram Aliskerov, Sergey Pavlovich taking on Alexander Volkov. This is such a stacked fight night in Saudi Arabia. Honestly, this is better than some of the pay-per-views we've had this year. You're trying to tell me that UFC 301 is better than this fight night? You need to get out, man. This is actually a pretty solid fight night. I'm going to be predicting every single fight on this card because why not? And as a UK fan, I'm actually proud because I actually get to watch this card in normal time, not just ridiculous hours. So for all you Americans and you non-Europeans, be prepared to change your timings for this fight because it is going to be on at a different time to normal. And also, fun fact about this card, no women MMA. So all you women MMA haters, there's no excuses if there's a slugfest between the men. There ain't no women MMA fights on tonight. Just a solid, not tonight, but whenever the card is. Just a solid card. So I'm going to be predicting every single fight on this card. And we'll start off with the first fight, which is a bit of a Dana White Contender Series level fight. Let's be completely honest. It's not actually Dana White Contender Series. It's like it's the road to the UFC finale between Xu Long and Shang Ho Li. I'm picking Shang Ho Li to win this one by decision. I don't know a great deal about either of these guys because they are fair, like they are just road to the UFC finale fighters. They're not really UFC level, but from what I've seen from both of them, Shang Ho Li seems to be a lot more well-rounded. Xu Long is a decent grappler, but he seems to rely a little bit too heavily on it, and when he doesn't have the grappling, he kind of looks like a fish out of water, whereas Shang Ho Li, he's a lot more well-rounded, and I think he's going to cancel out the grappling and he's going to be able to piece up Xu Long on the feet in this fight and get the decision win. Xu Long's best chance of winning this fight is if he's able to take down Shang and keep him down, but I just don't think he is. Shang's impressed me a lot more, so I'm going Shang Ho Li to win this one by decision, but again, neither of these guys are really UFC level. It is just kind of a road to the UFC finale, and it isn't going to be the highest level MMA fight you've seen on this card, but it is what it is. Shang Ho Li to win this one by decision, just because he seems to be a lot more well-rounded. Then we've got Denis Tuilulin versus Cedric Dumas. Yeah, I'm going Cedric Dumas. This is like so obviously a fight that they've purposely booked to just get Denis Tuilulin out the UFC and to push Cedric Dumas. Cedric Dumas obviously lost in his last fight to Ruziboyev, which isn't a bad loss because look at how Ruziboyev was able to do against Joaquin Buckley, who's a ranked welterweight, and there was an eye poke, which you can argue kind of affected Dumas's performance. He's also been able to beat Cody Brundage. He's had a couple good wins on his record, and he seems to have really good wrestling, and he's conveniently matched up against a guy who's got no wrestling in Tuilulin. Now, although I will say Tuilulin's lost a lot of his last fights, I mean, he's won 1 out of his last 4, it has been against decent fighters. Christian Leroy Duncan, who's a great middleweight, Gregory Rodriguez, who's a great middleweight, so it's not like he's fighting absolute bums, but I feel like Cedric Dumas is just going to completely out-wrestle Tuilulin in this fight, and again, I just think Cedric is going to win by decision. Maybe he's able to latch up a submission, but I think Dumas is going to keep him down, beat him with ground and pound, get the decision win over Tuilulin in this fight, and yeah, they've purposely done this fight just to push Dumas and to probably cut Tuilulin if he loses this fight because he just doesn't seem to be UFC worthy, even though he is losing to pretty good fighters and he's getting up there in age as well, 36 years old. I think they're doing this to push Dumas, and I think he's going to use his grappling effectively, and he is going to out-grapple Tuilulin and get the decision win, as he's shown against Cody Brundage when he was able to out-grapple him. So I'm going I'm going Dumas to win this one by decision. Then we've got a fight with the newcomer in the UFC. We've got Magomed how do I even pronounce this name? Magomed Gadzhiyasulov versus Brendan Moreno. I'm going to call him Magomed. Yeah, Magomed is a really good prospect, 8-0, never lost a fight, and he's against Ribeiro. Yeah, I feel like this is a very favourable matchup for Magomed. I think he's got the wrestling advantage and the striking advantage. Now, Ribeiro, he is a dangerous striker. I'll give him that. He is pretty dangerous on the feet if he lands one. He's a pretty dangerous guy, but I feel like Magomed Gadzhiyasulov, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name. Magomed, he seems to be a much more, at least from a technical standpoint, a much better striker. His shot selection's a lot better. He seems to have much better timing than Ribeiro. Ribeiro seems to heavily rely on his power a little bit too much. And I think also what Magomed has into this fight is his grappling. I think he can definitely use his grappling offensively in this fight to win the fight, and I think that's exactly what he's going to do. I think he's going to take down Ribeiro, and because I don't think he's going to want to risk it against Ribeiro on the feet. He's going to take him down, do a lot of damage in that first round, and then I think in that second round he's going to latch up a submission against Ribeiro, win the fight. I think this is his first fight in the UFC, win the fight, and I think he's going to win by second round submission. Ribeiro, he's got a lot of power to his name, but he's just not consistent enough. He's a bit of an inconsistent striker. He's a bit of a sloppy striker, not too technical, and also when it comes to submissions, he doesn't seem to have the best submission defense, whereas Magomed, he seems to be really good offensively when it comes to striking and grappling, but the difference between the two of them is that Magomed seems to be a lot more composed. So I'm going Magomed to win this one by second round submission against Ribeiro. I think he's going to take him down in the first, dominate him pretty comfortably, and then in the second round he's going to latch up the submission against Ribeiro and he's going to get the second round submission. So I'm going Magomed submission in the second round. Then we've got Gafurov versus Kyung Ho Kang. Kyung-Ho Kang. I'm going... This is a bit of a weird fight because Muin Gafurov, he had the fight with Saidna Magomedov, which obviously is a really good bantamweight, but at the same time, you can't really blame him for losing to Saidna Magomedov. But the problem is he hasn't won in the UFC. You've got Gafurov, who hasn't won a single fight in the UFC, and he's going to be facing Ho Kang, who's been in the UFC since 2013. So I'm picking Ho Kang to win this one, and I'm going to pick him to win by decision. I think he's going to win specifically by his grappling, but the dude has been in the UFC since 2013. He's much more experienced than Gafurov. And Gafurov hasn't won a single fight in the UFC either. I think it will be a fairly close and competitive fight. I don't think Ho Kang's going to dominate him, but I think he does have a big grappling advantage coming into this fight because Gafurov just hasn't really shown me anything. He seems to be a bit of a scrapper, but he hasn't shown me anything to make me want to pick him over Ho Kang, who's got really good grappling. Well, not really good grappling, but he's got decent grappling, which I think is going to win him this fight. I think he's going to use it offensively, keep him against the cage, land those takedowns, land those like ground and pound. I think he's a much better job at setting up takedowns as well. So I'm going to go Ho Kang to set up the takedowns, take down Gafurov, and get the win by decision because Gafurov just hasn't shown me anything to show me that he beats a guy who's been in the UFC since 2013, and Gafurov has not won a single fight in the UFC. The dude has won 2 out of his last 3. He's even lost to guys outside of the UFC as well. It's not like he's coming to the UFC on a clean streak. So I'm going Ho Kang to win this one by decision. I think this is a pretty comfortable pick. I do think it will be a close fight. I don't think it's going to dominate him, but Gafurov hasn't shown me anything to make me want to pick him over Ho Kang because Ho Kang just seems to be a lot more consistent, especially with his grappling. And he lost to John Castaneda as well, who's not even a bad loss. So I'm going to Ho Kang to win this one by decision. And then we've got the fight that I'm a really big fan of. Rinat Fakhretdinov versus Nicholas Dalby. It's very rare that we get a fight between 2 fighters who are doing really well in the UFC. 2 fighters who have a lot of good wins to their name recently. Usually fights are usually between like a fighter who's doing well and a fighter who's a kind of a sacrificial lamb. Whereas this fight is between 2 very, very solid fighters, and these guys have looked really good recently. This is going to be an absolute banger, and I can't wait for this fight. I think this is going to be a great fight, but I am picking Rinat to win this one. I think Rinat's just got more ways to win. Nicholas Dalby's a really good pressure wrestler. His pressure's amazing in his fights, and he can overwhelm people, but I just think Rinat's more dangerous. He's kind of got this sharp striking, dangerous striking, where he can kind of clip you from anywhere, especially against a guy like Dalby, who likes to come in a lot. And he's also got really dangerous wrestling as well. He's able to find submissions from everywhere. Dalby's a really tough fighter. He can take a big hit, which is why I don't think Rinat's going to KO him in this fight. I think it will be a decision by Rinat. He can take a big hit, and he's also got this exhausting wrestling pace that he has. It is going to be a banger, but I think the wrestling will cancel out and it's going to be a striking matchup. I think Rinat, he's got really good wrestling. Nicholas Dalby, he kind of relies on his wrestling. I think it's going to cancel out. It'll be a fight on the feet, and I think Rinat is going to land some shots on the feet. Like I said, he's got really dangerous, sharp striking, really good precision as well, and I don't think Dalby's going to be able to, compete with him on the feet. So I'm going Rinat, basically just to outstrike Dalby for a few rounds. There will be moments where they have grappling exchanges in which I think Renat's going to do enough to keep it on the feet and keep it moving. Maybe even land a takedown of his own, who knows, or maybe even land a submission like a guillotine when he's getting taken down, or when he's trying to defend the takedown, because he's that good of a submission artist. And also something to note about Rinat, before his last fight against Zaleski dos Santos, this dude was on a 20-fight winning streak, an absolute massive winning streak. A lot of hype to his name does Rinat, and I think he's going to go out there and beat him by decision. I would pick him to win by stoppage, but from what I've seen recently, Nicholas Dalby's tough. He was even able to beat Gabriel Bonfirm, which is a really good win, and Muslim Salikov. But I'm going Rinat to win this one by decision, but this is going to be a banger, and I think for the prelims, this is going to be the fight of the night. This is a really, really solid fight. Really fun fight to watch. Can't wait for it, but I'm going Rinat. He's one of my favourite prospects in the UFC. I think he's going to get it done by decision because of his striking advantage. And then we have Nasrat Haqparast versus Jared Gordon. I don't really understand why many people are picking Jared Gordon to win this fight. Like, we get it. He had a fight with Paddy Pimblett that he should have won. Like, he had a fight with Paddy Pimblett, a really close fight with Pimblett that he should have won. He got beaten by Grant Dawson as well. He's coming off a good win over Mark Madsden. But there's just not much you can really say about Jared Gordon coming into this fight to show me that he beats Nasrat Haqparast. He's on a 3-fight winning streak, he's Haqparast. His last win was Jamie Malarkey, which I understand isn't the highest level opposition, but he's improved a lot as Haqparast. You're looking at him against Dan Hooker and Bobby Green, who he lost to. Since those fights, he seems to have improved his boxing a lot. He seems to have just improved rapidly as a fighter. He's a much younger fighter than Jared Gordon as well. He seems to be improved a lot more, whereas Gordon, he has the same game plan every fight. Pressure boxing just doesn't seem to be working, and he just hasn't really looked that good recently. consistently, whereas Nasrat, I think he's going to clip him, and I think he's going to get him by a KO in the first round. Not first round, third round. I think I'm going round 3 KO to Haqparast. I think it's going to be a fairly competitive boxing match for the majority of the fight, in which I think Haqparast is going to land the better shots. And I think in that third round, because Jared Gordon's a kind of a pressure boxer, and I think he's eligible to get in hit, I think Haqparast is going to hit him with a big shot, land a big shot on Jared Gordon, drop him, go for the ground and pound finish, and I'm going with Nasrat Haqparast to get this one by KO in the third round. I just think Jared Gordon, he seems to slow down a little bit in fights. He hasn't shown me anything impressive recently to show me that he's able to beat a guy like Haqparast, who's put together a really good winning streak, and Haqparast seems to have improved a lot. So I'm going Nasrat Haqparast to win this one by KO in the third round. He's going to clip Jared Gordon. Could even be in the second round. I'm going to go second or third round, but I'll go third round to be safe. Third round KO to Nasrat Haqparast against Jared Gordon, because Jared Gordon just seems to be doing the exact same thing every fight, and it ain't working, whereas Haqparast has improved a lot. And then the main card, Sharapute Magomedov versus Joyton Lutterbach. Now, Joyton Lutterbach has been fighting on like other promotions like Karate Combat, and he actually fought in the PFL, but even though he's a really good striker outside of the UFC, I just feel like this is a fight to push Sharapute Magomedov further in his career, and the way that I've been looking at them both, I've got to go Sharapute Magomedov to win this fight. I don't even know where they found Joyton Lutterbach. I've looked at his Tapology record. I can't even find any MMA fights. All of his fights seem to be karate or kickboxing. I can't find a single one of his MMA fights on there. I don't know how the UFC found this dude and how he's made it into the UFC. But I'm going Sharapute Magomedov to win this one. I think the first round is going to be one of those performances where Sharapute Magomedov is just piecing him up badly. It's going to be one of those things where it's like, okay, how long left does Joyton Lutterbach have? He's getting badly hurt here. And then in the second round, he finishes the job, lands a big kick. I think he's going to drop Lutterbach, get that TKO in the second round, and he's going to stop him. It's just a free win to Sharapute Magomedov. I know he was scheduled to fight Portieri, in which he had to cancel that fight because he ended up fighting Michel Pereira on short notice. at UFC 301. But Sharapute Magomedov is a really good kickboxer, man. One of the best kickers, most crafty kickers in the UFC. And even though Joyton Lutterbach, he's a pretty decent striker from what I've seen in his record. He does a lot of kickboxing, a lot of karate. He's been brought in the UFC on short notice to give Magomedov a free win. I don't know where they found this dude. I think he's going to get finished by Magomedov in either the first round or the second round by strikes, because Magomedov is one of the most crafty kickboxers in the UFC. So I'm going Sharapute Magomedov to win this one by KO, TKO in the second round, and hopefully from there we can see Sharapute Magomedov get a big fight, maybe like, I don't know, a Roman Kopylov. That'd be fun, wouldn't it? Roman Kopylov versus Sharapute Magomedov. That's a sick fight. But yeah, Joyton Lutterbach, he's just a sacrificial lamb in this fight, and he's going to get smoked. Then we have Johnny Walker versus Volkan Oezdemir. This is just a 50-50 fight. This is essentially just a 50-50 fight between Johnny Walker and Volkan Oezdemir. It's just a 50-50 coin flip. But if I had to pick one, I think Volkan Oezdemir is the more trustworthy guy to beat. He hasn't looked amazing in his recent fights compared to his UFC debut. He was able to get a win over Bogdan, which I guess is impressive. And I guess he was able to beat Paul Craig, who's trash. He lost to Nikita Krylov in which was a really fun fight. Obviously, he lost to Ankalaev and lost to Yuri as well. But those guys are the top light heavyweights. Whereas you look at Johnny Walker, and even though he had put together a bit of a winning streak before his fight with Ankalaev where he got KO'd, those weren't against the best opposition. Ian Q Talaba was essentially a free win for Johnny Walker to get back on track. Paul Craig, one of the most inconsistent fighters in the UFC, and Oezdemir is also beating Craig. And then he beat Anthony Smith, where obviously he was attacking his family. But that was Anthony Smith at the end of the day, not really the most consistent fighter in the UFC. And before that winning streak, he got KO'd out cold by Jamal Hill. He's really chinny as Johnny Walker. Volkan Oezdemir just seems to be a lot more consistent. I think he gets it done. I think Walker, like I said, Oezdemir just seems to be a lot more well-rounded, and I think the danger factor of Volkan Oezdemir is going to play into part here. I think he's a lot more dangerous than Johnny Walker. He's going to clip Johnny Walker with a big shot, wobble him a little bit, maybe not get the finish as of right now. Walker's just, it is what it is. Neither of these guys are that good. Like, I feel like neither of these guys are going to progress into the top 5. This is just a fight between two kind of mid-fighters in the top 10. But I think Volkan Oezdemir takes it on the feet. I think the fight is going to stay predominantly on the feet. I don't think Johnny Walker's going to engage in any grappling. And I think Volkan Oezdemir is going to get this one done by decision at the end of the fight. It is a bit of a 50-50 pick. Johnny Walker could definitely come out with some wild shit and just get the win. But I'm going Volkan Oezdemir. It is a bit of a 50-50 pick. But Oezdemir just seems to be a more consistent fighter to me than Johnny Walker. So I'm going Volkan Oezdemir to win this one by decision. Then we've got Kelvin Gastelum versus Daniel Rodriguez. I'm going Kelvin Gastelum to win this one, and I'm going to say he wins it by decision. Daniel Rodriguez just, with all due respect, he just ain't that good. Like, you look at Daniel Rodriguez, what has he actually done? Like, if you look at his recent performances, first of all, he's 37 years old. He's getting up there in age. He's been out for over a year when he fought Ian Gary, and he got KO'd in the first round. Before that, he fought Neil Magny, the gatekeeper of the welterweight division. He got finished by Neil Magny as well. Before that, he fought Li Jingliang, where he was a I know it was a short notice fight, but I thought Li Jingliang won that fight. I don't know how Daniel Rodriguez won that, so he managed to get a robbery win over Li Jingliang. And then before that, his actual notable win was all the way back in 2021, where he beat Kevin Lee, who's on this massive losing streak. So it isn't like Daniel Rodriguez recently has been looking good, and I know that Kelvin Gastelum is not on the top of his game recently as well. He has lost a majority of his fights recently, but at least he's been facing the top opposition: Sean Brady, Jared Cannonier, Robert Whittaker, Adesanya, Jack Hermanson. These are the guys he's facing. He's facing top welterweights, and he looked really good against Chris Curtis as well. His boxing in that fight seemed to improve a lot, and he seems to be, on the feet at least, improved. Well, not necessarily improved, but he seems to have finally found his thing again. Does Kelvin Gastelum? His striking seems to be much better. I don't think he's going to finish Daniel Rodriguez. Daniel Rodriguez is quite a tough guy. He can kind of take a big shot. I know the Ian Gary fight doesn't show that, but he can kind of take a big shot, does Daniel Rodriguez. And I also think Kelvin Gastelum doesn't have that same, he just doesn't have that same thing he had back in the day where he was able to put people out of there like it was nothing. But I'm going to go Kelvin Gastelum to win this one by decision. Daniel Rodriguez just hasn't impressed me in his recent fights. He's been out for over a year. He's been pretty inactive, and his recent fights, from what I've seen from both their recent fights, I've got to go Gastelum to win this fight. He seems to be the much better boxer in this fight, so I'm going Gastelum to win this one by decision. And then we have a fight that I can't wait for. Now, I do believe we were supposed to have I'm not having Naimov on this card, but it has been cancelled. I don't know any word on it, if it's been rescheduled or not, against a different opponent. But then we have the co-main event, Sergey Pavlovich versus Alexander Volkov. I can't wait for this fight. This is like a fight that you could put on like the co-main event of a pay-per-view. This is such a good fight in the heavyweight division. It's a bit weird because they were both friends, but I've honestly been back and forth with it. Ever since this fight got announced, I've been back and forth on who I'm picking, because sometimes I look at Sergey Pavlovich and the winning streak that he had before the Aspinall fight, the way he put Curtis Blades out of there, and I'm like, of course he's going to put Volkov out of there. You know, it's Sergey Pavlovich, one of the best boxers in the division, super dangerous. But then you look at Alexander Volkov. He's much better on the feet than anyone Pavlovich has ever faced, par Tom Aspinall. Like, he's better than Derek Lewis. He's better than Tatu Ivaza. He's better than Curtis Blades on the feet. On top of that, he's on a 3-fight winning streak, all by way of finish. He's only really been finished and beaten by the best guys in the UFC as well. It's such a difficult fight to pick. I think we're going to learn a lot in this fight as well. Like, if Sergey Pavlovich can beat Volkov, it shows us that he's not relying on these shorter, fattier, brawlier heavyweights to get wins over, and he can actually beat a solid striker in the division, which is going to make Pavlovich 10 times more dangerous. And if he loses to Volkov, that is a big statement making with Alexander Volkov, and maybe it shows us that Pavlovich can't really perform on the feet against other elite strikers. But if I had to pick one of them, I would go Sergey Pavlovich to win this one. I think he's more dangerous than Alexander Volkov. I don't think there's going to be much grappling in that fight. And even though Volkov, as you know, he's on a win streak, they weren't flawless. The fight with Tatu Ivaza, he was getting his legs absolutely chopped, and Ivaza was able to land sometimes. And I know that Pavlovich isn't going to be throwing any leg kicks. The dude is just a one-dimensional boxer. I think he's much more dangerous, and I think if Pavlovich is going to win, he's obviously going to win by TKO in the first round. I'm going Pavlovich to beat Volkov by first round TKO in this fight. It is a super, super close fight, and honestly, it's not a confident pick, but if I had to pick one of them, I'm going Pavlovich to win by first round TKO. Volkov, he is on a bit of a winning streak. Like I said, he was able to beat Tapura, Rosenstruik, Romanov, Tuivasa, with the only guy in between that who he lost to being the interim champion in Tom Aspinall. I just think Volkov, he's got more danger, and I think the fact that he was able to beat Curtis Blades impressed me a lot. Not a confident pick, but one thing's for sure, and it's going to be an absolute banger. I'm going Sergey Pavlovich to win this one, and I'm going him to win this one by KO or TKO in the first round. I think he clips Volkov with a big shot, rains down with ground and pound, and I'm interested to see how he's improved after the fight with Tom Aspinall. So I'm going Sergey Pavlovich. And then finally, the main event, Robert Whittaker versus Ikram Aliskerov. I have said for the longest time, if you've watched my videos, Ikram Aliskerov is probably my favourite prospect in the UFC right now, but I am not a fan of fighters who have had 1 or 2 fights in the UFC getting a step up in competition this big. I mean, we saw a fairly big step up in competition after Shamil Gaziev fought Martin Bidet and then fought Rosenstruik, and look how that turned out. This is a 10 times bigger leap in competition. To go from Wally Alves to Robert Whittaker is insane. I am going Robert Whittaker to win this one by KO in the third round. Ikram Aliskerov, really good fighter, really well-rounded, absolutely dangerous, great striking offense, great wrestler, but I just don't think he's built his way up to the fight with Robert Whittaker. I understand why the fight has been made. It's because they needed a quick replacement on short notice. But Ikram Aliskerov has not shown me anything yet to show me that he beats Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker is a top 3 middleweight of all time. He's coming off that great win over Paulo Costa. He's been at the top of the middleweight division for ages. He's fought every style you can possibly think of. He seems to have improved a lot, and his striking is so crisp. And he's been preparing for a style similar to Aliskerov as well. He's been preparing for Khamzat Chimaev, who's a much more offensive grappler than Aliskerov, and has actually beaten Aliskerov before. Ikram Aliskerov, I think he could be competitive in the early rounds because of how good Aliskerov is from what he's shown. But I think when he gets to the 3rd round, Aliskerov is going to be facing his toughest fight he's ever had. Whittaker's going to clip him with a big shot. In fact, I think it's specifically going to be the 1-2 head kick that he clips Aliskerov with. I think he's going to put Aliskerov down, and I think Robert Whittaker's going to rain down ground and pound. Maybe he even gets a clean KO. And I think the experience, the level that Whittaker's at is just way too much for Ikram Aliskerov. I'm going Robert Whittaker to win this fight by KO in the 3rd round. I know Ikram Aliskerov's one of my favourite prospects in the UFC, but that doesn't mean I would be delusional to pick him against Robert Whittaker when he's done absolutely nothing to show that. So I'm going Whittaker by KO in the 3rd round, but that is my prediction for UFC Saudi Arabia. One of the most stacked fight nights of all time. Definitely the most stacked fight night we've had this year so far. So let me know your thoughts on this card, who you think is going to win, especially in the main and the co-main event, because those are the 2 most intriguing on the card. And thank you for watching.